Hello everyone, Emily here. I have some mainstay yarn. Two different colors work better and only two colors works the best. I have a 5.0 crochet hook and I have a friend whose wife is pregnant. They don't know if it's a boy or a girl, so I thought I would make them a baby blanket. And this is a really pretty pattern. So I'm going to make a slip knot and I'm going to stick my crochet hook on it. And I am going to chain 125. So I'm just going to grab my yarn and pull it through. I'm going to do 125. This yarn is so pretty. So I did 125 stitches and now I'm ready to just go ahead and do go right into that very first stitch, and I'm going to do a single crochet all the way across. So you just pull it through, grab the yarn and pull it through, and those are your single crochets. Grab it, pull it through, grab your yarn, pull it through. You can see I'm only going through one strand on the chain. I am planning on putting a border on this blanket, so the edges are going to be pretty rough, but I will be putting a border, and then I will bury all of my tails. I love how these colors are coming out. So we're just going to do that all the way across. And this blanket, we're only going to be working on one side. We won't be turning our work after we do the first two rows. So this is our first row. We're going to turn, and then after that will be the only time we're turning our project, because we'll be working on the right side for the rest of the project until we get ready to do our border. So I'm here at the end, and if you want to start burying yours because you don't like to have all those tails at the end, you certainly can. I like to bury my tails, but you can also bury them when you do your outside ruffle. I'm going to go into that last stitch. I'm not going to finish it because I want to change my color. This pattern works really good with two colors, and you can start changing your color, and I will be back when I change my color so you can see how I do that. And I'm just going to pull that. I'm going to chain one. Like I said, this is the only time during the blanket that you're going to be turning your work. I'm going to go ahead and tie a knot, or tie my two strands together for a knot so it doesn't come apart. I love my knots. Do not cut your your white part. I should have not have cut the white. I should have only cut the variegated. So I'm going to have to use a knot to tie it together. So yeah, don't do what I did. Just cut the variegated. So now I'm going to use the white. I'm going to chain one. And I'm going to turn my work. Oh, I have a piece hanging, but I'm going to leave it alone. I don't want to mess with it, with all the knots that I just did. So I will fix that when I do my border. So I'm going to go in the back loops only. So we're only going to go in the back loops. So you're going to go right into that very first one. And we're going to go all the way across with single crochets in the back loops only. So I hope you can see that I'm only going in the back loops. So you'll see there's like a little V, and we're just going to go in that back strand. So we're going to just keep going and do that all the way across. I'm here at the end, and I'm going in the back loops. Or I'm not at the end, I'm kind of in the middle maybe. Not even close to the middle, but I just want you to see me going in the back loops. It's kind of hard to see with this dark color. And it's working up pretty fast, so I'm pretty happy with that, even though it's 125 stitches. These single crochets are really nice because it makes the blanket nice and tight with no holes. Isn't that pretty? Here I'm at the end. So we're going to go to the end. Make sure you go in that back stitch, and I do stop every 5 rows to make sure I have 105 stitches. 125 stitches. So that last stitch you can go in the back loop only, or you can go in both loops, whichever one you prefer. If you go into both loops, it kind of makes it sturdy, but I kind of like going in the back loop. Sometimes I'll do back both of them, back both of them. Yeah, because it's going to be really rough at the end. Now, this knot that you're tying, you're not going to try to go into that when you get to the end. So now we're on the right side. This is the only side we're going to be working on. Okay, so we're going to grab our color again. And we're not going to go into that little tiny thing there. We're going to go into this first stitch, and we are going to go into both. We're going to grab our yarn and pull it through. And I want you to remember that this first stitch that you do and the last stitch, you'll never do a front post there. There will always be a single crochet. So we are going to go into this back loops now. And I like to tie my end knots together just to make it nice and sturdy, and then when I put my border on, I'm just going to go right over them. So what we're going to do is we're going to do 4 single crochets. We did 1, this is 2, 3, and then 4. Now we're going to do a double crochet, and we're going to go to the row below. So we're going to use that front loop that we didn't use. So you can see the white. We're going to go to the loop right below it, yarn over, grab that loop. I'm going to pull my yarn through. I'm going to pull it through really nice and loose, and I like to put my finger on it and hold it. Then I'm going to bring my yarn through the first 2, grab my yarn and bring it through the second 2. Now don't go into that stitch or you're going to be increasing. I'm going to go to the next stitch and I'm going to do 4 more single crochets, and then I will do another front post to the row below. Remember, on your fifth stitch, you're going to do a double crochet and you're going to go to that front single loop that we didn't use. You're not going to use the one behind, you're going to go to the next one and do 4 single crochets and do another front post. And if you go into the stitch behind your front post, you're going to be decreasing and you don't want to do that. But if for some reason down the road you make an accident when you're counting your stitches and you don't have enough, you can always go into that stitch behind there to add a stitch. But you only want to do that if you need to. So when you do that double crochet, just look behind, make sure you don't go into that stitch and go into the next one. So this is going to be our repeat row for the rest of the blanket, and you're going to notice that when we get to the end, we are going to tie it off. So we're always going to be working on this side of the blanket, always this side. This is a really beautiful pattern, and so we're not going straight up, we are going to be going at a diagonal. We're going to go diagonal. And so I'm going to show you how to do that, because later in the blanket I'm going to change my colors, and I'll come back and do a tutorial when I change colors, and then I'm going to do a different pattern. So the first pattern is going to be this slant. Almost looks like steps. Just remember 4 single crochets and then your front post, which is a double crochet. And you're not going to do anything in the stitch behind that double crochet. I like to put my finger right there to hold it after I pull it up a little bit, just so it's not pulling on that bottom stitch. Don't do the one behind. But like I said, if you count and you're missing a stitch somewhere, you don't see it, you can use that stitch if you need to. So if you were to put a single crochet back there to add a stitch, you wouldn't be able to tell. And just keep doing this all the way across. This is such an easy stitch, and it really makes a beautiful blanket. So as I go on, I'll be changing colors, changing stitches, and I'll be back to do tutorials on those. But isn't that pretty? So I'm here at the end. Now remember, the first stitch and the last stitch, you will never do a front post double crochet, because those are your first and last stitches. So now I'm going to skip that one, go to the next one, I'm going to go to the end, and then I'm going to tie it off, and then I'll go back to the beginning and do my next row. I'm going to put a border on it. I hate these tails, they drive me insane crazy. But you can bury them when you do your border. You could bury them now if you wanted to. It just depends on what you want to do. So I'm not happy, so I'm going to tie it with a knot with the one below. It's one way you can do it, or you could tie a knot on the end. I like to do that too. Make sure you stay on the same side. I'm going to go back to where we started. Now we're going to do the white. Now every time I do the white, I'm going to do single crochets. So I'm going to go into that very first stitch, not your chain one, but the stitch. And I'm going to go through both loops. I'm going to pull the yarn through. I'm going to just chain one and I'm going to pull it nice and tight. So a nice knot, and I'm going to chain one. Now we're going to do a back loop, but we're going to do the back loop. You're going to count and make sure that you have 4 before that double crochet. And we're just going to do a single crochet stitch all the way across. And we're only going in the back loops. So we're here at the end. You can see we have 2 stitches left here. And when I get to the last stitch, you can go through one or both. And you're just going to go ahead and do one, pull it really tight, one chain and pull it tight. And I'm going to cut it. And then sometimes I tie a knot on the end. I happen to, after I tie a knot on the end, I'm still tying them together just for extra protection. Isn't it pretty? So we're going to go back to the beginning and we're going to work on the same side. Make sure you stay on the same side. And we're going to go ahead and go into that first stitch. Isn't that pretty? So we're going to go through both loops of that first stitch. Not your chain, but your stitch. Now, when we start doing our back posts, you are going to go into this first stitch and you're going to do a back post to this one. So go ahead and do your front post, or pull your yarn through, and you're going to go ahead and do your single crochet, or your chain, excuse me, do a chain, but you're going to go into the same stitch and do your first back loop single crochet. And then we're going to do 4, and we're going to go into the next one next to that front post. We're going to go into the next one will be where we do our front post. And your 4th single crochet should end at the top above where you did your front post. So now we know that we're correct. And the next one, we're going to go down and do our double crochet. So this is going to look like the stairs, like you're stepping up like stairs or slanting. So we did that. We're going to skip the one behind it, and we're going to go into the next back stitch. We're only doing the back loops, single crochets in the back loops. We're going to do 4. Our 4th one is going to end at the top of that double crochet stitch, and the next one will be our double crochet in the previous round's front loop, and we're going to do our double crochet. We're not going to go in the one behind it, but go to the next one, do 4 single crochets. The 4th one should always end above your front post double crochet, and then you're going to do your double crochet in the next one next to it. And then you can see how the pattern's already starting to form. This is going to be our 2 repeat rows. So at the beginning, when you go into that first stitch and you do your chain, that first stitch is the same stitch you're going to do your first back stitch. And at the end, you can either go into both loops or just the back loop. And sometimes I do every other one that way. But you can decide which way you want to do it. Sometimes I feel like if I go through both of them, both loops, it makes it a little bit tight. So sometimes I just like to go in the back stitch. But at the end, you're always just going to chain 1, pull it tight, and cut it. You can see I'm tying a knot at the end. Now we're going to go all the way to the beginning and do another single crochet row of the white. And we're going to go in the back loops only. Isn't that pretty? So remember, you're going to go all the way to the end and tie it off. Now that very last stitch at the end will always be a single crochet. And you can decide to go in just the back loop at the end or through 2 loops. It's totally up to you. I kind of like going into the back loop, but if you go through both loops, it does make it feel a little sturdier. And then of course I always like to tie a knot, and that helps me because I feel like it can't come undone, it can't get past that knot. And then when I put my border on, of course I'm going to bury all of those. So remember, now the next row that comes down, you'll come down right next to that, and that will be the last one that's going to come down, because the last stitch is always going to be that single crochet. So this will be your last front post, for a while, because you won't have any other stitches to do one. You'll just continue to go over with all the other stitches, and it kind of works up like a staircase. Remember that first stitch will always be the stitch you go into, but you will never do that as a front post. You can start the second one as a front post, and there's always 4 before you come to your front post, and then you do your front post and 4 after, and so you always go into the row after. So now the next row, you go up, put your finger up above that front post, you count 4 back, and then that's where you know you will put your front post. So before you start crocheting, you're always going to look at the project, go to that front post, go above it, because you know that's where your last single crochet is going to be, and then count 4 back, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then that's where you're going to start your front post for the next front post row. And if you practice that, it will be really easy. So just make sure that you count to make sure that you're doing a front post at the beginning where you need to, but remember that the front, the first and the last are always a single crochet. Okay? Thank you for watching. Have a great day. Bye. I hope you liked the tutorial.